5, better known by his green. I don't know what the taxonomy is, but some kind of creature in his avatar on Twitter.
I think it's an ogre.
That sounds about right to me. But one of the best analysts of the ins and outs of the standard metagame, so always a good follow, good person to keep up with. And he's on Teamer Elementals for this tournament, up against not a mirror, but a Teamer Flash deck out of Marcio Carvalho.
Yeah, and this is a kind of mirror where it's basically going to come down to what resources Marcio has available in a lot of cases, because Hernandez's deck is much better at just going bigger. Right, so you're going to have more powerful cards pound for pound through, say, just any of these ultimatums, Terror of the Peaks, and so on. But that doesn't matter if they just get quenched.
And turn 2 Leafkin Druid here for Hernandez. We'll see if that does meet a quench.
And you see Hernandez already saying, okay, I know that this is when this stuff starts. But would you rather eat this turn's worth of mana or next turn's worth of mana?
Aethergast putting that Leafkin Druid back to the top. Hernandez is interested in trying to stick that one again. And we saw Ross on Team of Flash early in the tournament with 2 copies of Quench. Marcio's no coward. The full 4 copies of Quench. So that card has to be at the forefront of Hernandez's mind here.
Oof, and now we're reaching the point where Hernandez just gets to start slamming these huge creatures.
Yeah, a missed land drop for Carvalho, suggesting his hand is full of action, but the game doesn't get any better if Hernandez plays scared. So yeah, we'll put Marcio to the test turn after turn. The first Terror of the Peaks meets an Aethergast, but that one just goes back on top, and we can try that again on the following turn. There it is, and I assume there it is again. We even get to play around Quench now. The Sinister Sabotage, which also helps Marcio dig for that all-important 4th land drop.
Leaves the card on top. There's the Steam Vents.
A 4th land drop and a red source for Marcio, who could have been confused for a Simic Flash deck until this point. Mystical Dispute for the sticker price tags the second Terror of the Peaks. But Cavalier of Thorns, another premier threat that Hernandez can try to sneak through next turn. Right,
Hernandez really just saying, okay, well, does this one resolve?
Emma, we have a Frilled Mystic in the building here.
How dare you bring that up to me?
Well, it's hard to ignore. It's right there. There's no ignoring it.
No, but we can. Like, no one is making us acknowledge this Frilled Mystic. We could just call it a, all kinds of... It's a vanilla 3-2. Who knows how it got onto this battlefield?
In my defense, it is my job to inform the audience what exactly is transpiring over here. And Frilled Mystic is there. It's undeniable.
All right, well, here's a Terror of the Peaks. A playable Magic card, if you will.
Does Marcio have the second Frilled Mystic to follow this up with? No, that Terror of the Peaks sticks. So
unfortunately, Marcio only had 7 counter spells in a row.
And no immediate impact for Terror of the Peaks. That's part of why the card saw no purchase in the Teferi Time Raveler format. But with that card out of the way, there's more room for a Bane Slayer, if you will, to make its impact. And Terror of the Peaks sure qualifies.
Right, and anything that deals with this now is also going to have that sort of Thunderbreak Regent-esque life payment required to even get it off the battlefield.
Yeah, Marcio can bounce it with a Brazen Borrower, but that sure doesn't feel good. This is Who Shakes the World, having to lock up the ground for Carvalho and apply some pressure. But no good attacks here in the face of that Terror of the Peaks. Unless, I guess, a Stomp could help to finish it off, so Adam may be a little reticent about blocking. And sure enough, he takes a 6. But now, here is Omnath, Locus of the Royal. And you see Adam, why is he leaving that Fable Passage back all these turns? Not cracking that for any kind of marginal deck thinning. He knows if he manages to stick Omnath, he wants that extra land drop and that extra trigger for that Locus of the Royal.
All right, this is Omnath sending 2 at Nissa and Terror of the Peaks sending 5 at that island.
Now Terra gets to swing in, finish off Nissa. You get to make a land drop, pump up either of our elementals. we even get to follow this up with Leafing Druid.
Oh, everything's getting bigger.
And Gilder Goose just to sweeten the deal. Unfortunate to be playing a bunch of O3s and O2s with a Terror of the Peaks in play, but Adam's fine with that anti-synergy. He'll live.
And this is what we were talking about going into the game, where Hernandez's cards are just worth more pound for pound than the Teamer Flash decks are.
Omnath Locus of the Royal, a much maligned card by various standard pundits, but showing what it can do in this game. Even if that doesn't happen often enough to be worth it in aggregate. Spectral Sailor coming down end of turn for Marcio. Dodging some of those sorcery speed Terror of the Peaks triggers.
Frilled Mystic not even having attacks here. This is kind of the story of this card.
And we saw Adam put a counter on one of the Leaf Controllers, making that into a 1/4, allowing him to tender a block on the Frilled Mystic without worrying about losing, let's say, an Omnath to Stomp if that had blocked instead.
Right, you don't want to just offer any of your resources if you don't have to.
And the great thing about Omnath in this deck is that it turns Mana Flood into a continual stream of cards, so it's hard to flood out entirely unless you hit an entire pocket of lands.
Oh, where there's a will, there's a way. Oh, that's a combo.
How do you feel about Uro with Terror of the Peaks?
Oh, yeah.
Or even
That's
how do you feel about
fun,
Uro? That's also a fine question.
It also puts a land into play for the Omnath.
Absolutely. So you see there a full 4 copies of Mystical Dispute. Those ones are going in for Adam Hernandez. Maybe debating over cards like Disable Stroke or Ether Gust as well. I imagine we'll see some of the expensive Sorcery Speed cards like Genesis Ultimatum might be a little too, a bit too much of a pipe dream here.
Yeah, there's a point where if you're trying to interact more, that card gets worse on its own. And if your opponent is trying to cast things like Aether Gust, like Mystical Dispute, Genesis Ultimatum is just going to be so much harder to resolve than any of your other cards.
At the same time, I've seen some players say Genesis Ultimatum is that's the big finish of the deck. And because it's a card that can win by itself, you're happy to just trade all of your other resources because if you just stick that one card, you can count on locking up the game. So maybe not a surprise to see all 4 copies staying in there for Adam.
Yeah, it's just a different approach in how you actually want your game to end up looking. And if you think you're going to end up having the time in these more interactive games to reach that point, then the Ultimatum is just going to be the best thing you could possibly top your curve with.
And Adam mulligans a slow hand into a slightly faster hand. Still with turn 3 Risen Reef as the first play here.
Risen Reef, a card that got a lot of attention when it was first released, that kind of fell off a bit. I think this is one of the cards like Edgewall Innkeeper that fell off as a result of the Cat Oven Mayhem Devil combo.
A super sweet card. I'm glad to see that finally get its day in the sun, and it's been a feature of these 8-set standard formats over the past year where these tribal decks have kind of been lying dormant for a bit, and then a core set or a banlist update really gives them a time to shine just before they would rotate out.
Mm-hmm.
So Omnath actually gets to stick here for Adam. Marcio cycles a Shark Typhoon end of turn. And Redcap Melee, a really nice mana-efficient answer to Omnath, also crucially to Terror of the Peaks.
Yeah, that card is just going to do so much work in this matchup at every turn.
There's the front half of Uro for Adam. Continuing to make his land drops, building towards that copy of Genesis Ultimatum in his hand, or the other 3 fantastic threats that he can try and stick instead.
Yeah, a lot of what it feels like we're seeing from Hernandez at this point is trying to build to a point where Mystical Dispute's not going to be particularly effective.
And this is where, if you're a Marcio, you would love to have either another Shark or a Nightpack Ambusher or some way to convert these turns where Adam spends 5 to 7 mana on a spell and you spend 1 to 3 into some other tangible advantage, like damage on board, some kind of battlefield presence. But as it is, the 2/2 Shark is not much of a clock.
Right, this is a spot where the strength of the Teamer Elementals deck is that it forces you to interact each turn rather than actually committing any of your mana into these threats that actually close the door, because well, like we've been saying, Hernandez's cards are just more powerful. But we are reaching that sort of crucial tipping point where Carvalho only needs to counter 1 or 2 more spells to really just be firmly ahead in this game.
Though, and there's another terrible piece for Adam. The more threats Adam runs into these counter spells, the more and more Uro can start looking at escaping from its chains once again.
Right, we are looking at a sort of tipping point here in a moment where Omnath plus Uro is a strong double spell turn for Hernandez.
And you think if Marcio had Nightback Ambusher or Nezu Who Shakes the World, this game could have been over several turns ago, but instead, they're just trading cards 1 for 1, and any one of Adam's cards that resolves just threatens to take over the game by itself.
Well, here's a way for Marcio to actually spend all of this mana that's available in this Spectral Sailor.
So here's Omnath. There's Sinister Sabotage, and now we get to attempt Uro, and if this gets countered, that's fine. Marcio has nothing left, and if it resolves, we have an Uro on the battlefield, and that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, at this point, it's hard to say if Hernandez even wants that last card to be a blank or just a dispute, so Hernandez knows the coast is clear for this Genesis ultimatum.
It's nice when you get to just not care about what your opponent has left over. Spectral Sailor draws a card in response, but Terror of the Peaks and Uro, a mighty combination here on the battlefield, and one of the weaknesses of the splash deck is you don't have a card that can catch yourself up. If Marcio had access to a card like Ugin, this might be a different story and a different game, but as it is, Marcio is deep in the hole. And we go into slow motion as we watch Adam clinch this game, clinch this match, move up to 4-1 in our tournament with Team Elementals, a deck that